The 70s. Muscle cars owned the streets, rock and roll owned the radio, and motorcycles were in the middle of a revolution that changed everything. But here's the thing. When people talk about classic bikes from that era, they always bring up the usual suspects. The Honda CB750. Maybe a Harley if they're feeling patriotic. What they don't talk about are the bikes that actually moved the needle. The ones that broke records, won championships, and pushed engineering so far forward that the competition had to scramble just to keep up. Today, we're pulling 10 machines out of the history books that deserve way more credit than they get. Some were faster than anything on four wheels. Others pioneered technology we take for granted now. A few earned their reputations the hard way. Number 7 almost saved the entire British motorcycle industry. Number 3 won the same award 5 years straight, something no bike has done since. And number 1, it earned a nickname that still makes riders nervous 50 years later. So without further delay, let's begin. Number 10, Yamaha RD350. We're starting with a bike most folks dismissed because of its size. 350. In a world where bigger meant better, Yamaha built something that embarrassed bikes twice its displacement. The RD350 hit dealers in 1973 with 39 horsepower from a two-stroke twin. That doesn't sound like much until you realize it kept up with and often beat the big boys in everything except straight-line pulls. Motorcyclist magazine basically said, in every way that matters on real roads, this 350 will outperform nearly anything you can buy. The secret was how it made power. Reed valves gave it a broad torque curve from low RPMs to redline. Lightweight made it quick. The handling let skilled riders take it through corners faster than guys on bikes with double the cubic inches. The aftermarket went crazy too. Right pipes and carbs could push past 50 horses. Suddenly you had a lightweight rocket at half the cost. Why don't people remember it? Simple. It wasn't a 750. It wasn't a 4-cylinder. But riders who knew? They were the ones grinning at stoplights while bigger bikes struggled once the road got twisty. You can still find these for 3 to 10 grand, which isn't bad for a giant killer. Number 9, Harley Davidson XR750. This is the machine that kept Harley relevant when Japanese manufacturers were eating everyone's lunch. The XR750 showed up in 1970 built for one purpose, winning dirt track races. From 1972 to 2008, this bike took home 28 Grand National Championships out of 37. 28. That's not dominance, that's a monopoly. At 314 pounds, it was lighter than the Japanese and Italian competition by 50 pounds or more. Aluminum heads, balanced components, and a 750 cubic centimeter V-twin tuned for sideways perfection at 70 miles per hour. But most people remember the XR750 because of one man and his jumps. Evel Knievel picked the XR750 for his stunts. Caesar's Palace fountains, 14 Greyhound buses. When you picture Evel flying through the air with an American flag, that's an XR750 underneath him. He trusted it wouldn't quit mid-air. A pristine 1980 model sold for 55 grand. Not bad for a bike that spent its life covered in dirt and catching air. Number 8, Suzuki GT750 Water Buffalo, 1971. Suzuki drops Japan's first liquid-cooled production motorcycle. Not some race-only special, a bike you could ride home from the dealership. They called it the Water Buffalo in America. The Kettle in Britain, 739 cubic centimeters, 3 cylinders, 2-stroke, liquid-cooled, 67 horses that felt smoother than most 4-strokes. 2 strokes were loud and rough. They vibrated your teeth loose. The GT750 said forget that. Water cooling kept temperatures stable, which meant less noise and vibration. Riders couldn't believe how quiet it was. This was a tourer. At 549 pounds, it wasn't winning stoplight drags. But point it down a highway for 300 miles with a passenger and gear. The GT750 ate that ride for breakfast. Top speed hit 120 in later models. Quarter mile under 14 seconds. Respectable enough to stay interesting. Why did it fade? Weight, mostly. Touring bikes don't get glory. They don't set lap records or win magazine shootouts. But that liquid cooling everyone uses now, the idea that a 2-stroke could be smooth and civilized. Suzuki proved it first, and first matters. A quick pause before we check out the next bike. If you're enjoying it so far, like this video and subscribe to our channel. Alright, let's get back to our list. Number 7. BSA Rocket 3, aka Triumph Trident. This is where it gets painful, because this bike could have saved the British motorcycle industry, and if management hadn't completely fumbled the launch. 1966, BSA and Triumph had a 750 cubic centimeter 3-cylinder ready to go, 740 cubic centimeters, overhead valves, 120-degree crank, 58 horsepower, genuine 120 miles per hour. If they'd released it in 66, they would have beaten Honda to market by 2 years. 2 years of being the only mass-produced multi-cylinder performance bike you could buy. Instead, management hired a design firm that had never styled a motorcycle. They came back with a ray gun exhaust and a boxy fuel tank riders called the shoebox tank. It delayed production by 18 months. By the time the Rocket 3 and Trident hit showrooms in 1968, Honda was already selling the CB750 with overhead cam, 5 speeds, electric start, disc brake, and better looks. But these bikes could still run. Slippery Sam, a production Trident, won 5 consecutive 750 cubic centimeter production races at the Isle of Man TT from 1971 through 1975. The Japanese got so frustrated they lobbied to ban bikes over 5 years old. When competition has to change the rules to beat you, that says something. But track success couldn't save the company. BSA was broke. Management kept making bad calls. By 1973, it was over. People look at these bikes and wonder what could have been. If they just trusted their engineers and beaten Honda to market, we might be telling a different story about British motorcycles. Under 5 seconds to 60, that 3-cylinder sound nothing else could match. The Rocket 3 and Trident deserved better. Number 6. Moto Guzzi 850 Le Mans Mark 1 1976, Italy. A magazine looks at Moto Guzzi's latest and writes that it's the sleekest, most aggressive thing they've ever seen on 2 wheels. The 850 Le Mans Mark 1 was engineer Lino Tanti's masterpiece. 844 cubic centimeters from a 90-degree V-twin, 71 to 80 horses. Top speed around 130, but those numbers don't tell you what made it special. Red and black livery with day-glow orange fairing sections. That small fairing cut wind without making it a touring rig. The stance was aggressive, leaned forward, ready to attack. Bigger valves, higher compression, Del Orto race carbs, and a linked braking system where the foot pedal activated one front disc and the rear together. Revolutionary then, standard now. The shaft drive made power smooth and maintenance easy. Low center of gravity meant you could tip into corners with confidence. And that 90-degree V-twin sound was pure Italian soul. Point a Le Mans down a twisty mountain road and you understand what cafe racer actually means. Not drag racing from stoplights, carrying speed through corners, braking late, getting on the gas early. Why does everyone remember Ducati instead? Marketing. Ducati was loud about their bikes. Moto Guzzi was workmanlike. They built great machines without selling the sizzle. The Le Mans delivered everything Ducati did: style, performance, handling, but with more civility. You could ride one every day. 437 pounds, linked brakes, gorgeous paint, cafe racer perfection, even if the world talked more about bikes from Bologna. Number 5. Laverda 750 SFC You Want Rare. 549. That's how many Laverda 750 SFCs got built between 1971 and 1976. Total, each one hand-assembled in northern Italy with no regard for cost. SFC Super Freni Competizione, Super Brakes Competition, built for endurance racing. 744 cubic centimeters, parallel twin, 70 to 75 horses. Top speed over 137. Quarter mile in 12.5 seconds, and it won everything. First and second at Zeltweg, won the 24 hours of Montjuic, won the 24 hours of Oss, second at Bol d'Or. These were marathons where bikes survived hours at race pace. The SFC didn't break. That bright orange wasn't style. It was track visibility, hand-shaped aluminum fairing, 23-liter aluminum tank, clip-on bars, rear set pegs. Nothing about this said comfortable Sunday ride. It said, win races. Most stayed in Europe where endurance racing was huge. The ones that made it to America, collectors grabbed them fast. Today, a pristine 750 SFC costs serious money. When fewer than 600 exist, hand-assembled, with multiple 24-hour victories, that's collectible. This wasn't for everyone. Loud, uncompromising, required skill and commitment. But if you wanted the closest thing to a factory race bike you could legally ride on the street, this was it. Bright orange, parallel twin howl, endurance champion. So rare most riders never saw one. That's legend status. Number 4, Kawasaki Z1 1968. Honda drops the CB750 and changes everything. Suddenly every manufacturer is scrambling. Kawasaki had a 750 almost ready. When they saw Honda's bike, they scrapped everything and started over. Project T103. They called it New York Steak internally. The goal wasn't to match Honda, it was to crush Honda. 903 cubic centimeters, inline 4, dual overhead cams, 82 horsepower, top speed 130 to 132 quarter mile in 12 seconds, 550 pounds. When the Z1 hit dealers in 1973, it was the most powerful Japanese 4-cylinder ever built. Roller-bearing crankshaft made it smooth from idle to redline. Twin front disc brakes that worked even in rain. Machine of the Year 4 years running. You don't get that by accident. Then Kawasaki stretched it to 1,015 cubic centimeters. The KZ1000. Same design, more power. This became the bike that defined universal Japanese motorcycle. Comfortable enough for daily riding, fast enough to embarrass sports cars, reliable enough you didn't need a backup plan. Police departments bought hundreds. When your job depends on a bike starting every time and running hard all day, you pick the KZ. Why don't people talk about the Z1 as much as the CB750? Honda got there first. The CB has mythical status as the first superbike, even though the Z1 was better in almost every way. Ask anyone who rode both. They'll tell you the truth. The Z1 was what you bought when you wanted the best, not just the first. 82 horses, 4 consecutive years as Machine of the Year. The Z1 earned its place even if it doesn't always get the credit. Number 3, Norton Commando 850. You want dominance? This bike won Machine of the Year from 1968 through 1972. 5 consecutive years. No motorcycle before or since has done that. The Norton Commando showed up in 1967 with something British parallel twins desperately needed. A solution to the vibration problem. Norton's isoelastic system mounted the engine on rubber isolators. The motor could shake all it wanted while the frame stayed smooth, simple, effective, brilliant. Started at 745 cubic centimeters, later bumped to 828. Overhead valves, air-cooled parallel twin, 60 horsepower, top speed around 115, 0 to 60 under 5 seconds, quarter mile mid-13s. Those numbers don't jump off the page, but the Commando felt like a proper British motorcycle without beating you to death. Smooth power, sharp handling, all-day comfort, 60,000 built over 10 years. For a British manufacturer in the 70s, that was respectable. Riders loved them. Magazines loved them. For 5 straight years, the industry agreed. This was the best. What went wrong? Money. Norton was bleeding cash. Bad decisions. Quality control slipped. The Japanese offered bikes that started every time, didn't leak oil, and cost less. By mid-70s, British bikes had a reputation. Beautiful when they ran, but would they run? The Commando was proof British engineering could compete. The isoelastic system was brilliant. The bike looked gorgeous, handled great. Riders genuinely loved these machines. But loving a motorcycle doesn't keep a company afloat when Japanese manufacturers are building bikes that simply work better for less money. 5 consecutive years as Machine of the Year, 60,000 sold, an engineering solution people still study today. The Norton Commando 850 deserved better, but at least it went out on top. Number 2, BMW R90S. This is the bike that saved BMW's motorcycle division from extinction. That's not exaggeration, that's documented history. Early 70s, BMW was in trouble. boring bikes, dropping sales. The company was seriously considering shutting down motorcycles. Then they handed design work to Hans Muth and told him to build something special. Muth delivered the R90S in 1973, and suddenly BMW wasn't boring. 898 cubic centimeters from an air-cooled boxer twin, cylinders sticking out like airplane wings, 67 horses, top speed 124, 0 to 62 in 4.8 seconds. But performance wasn't what caught attention first. It was the look. That bikini fairing was BMW's first factory-fitted fairing ever. Smoke, black, and silver, or Daytona orange. Bold, distinctive. This wasn't your grandfather's BMW. Then Reg Pridmore won the first AMA Superbike Championship in 1976 on an R90S, dominated. Suddenly, BMW had racing credibility in America. Here's what made it brilliant. It could be anything you needed. Weekend canyon carving, daily commute, long distance touring. Few bikes could legitimately do everything well, but the R90S pulled it off. That boxer engine had torque everywhere. Shaft drive meant low maintenance and smooth power. The handling was confidence-inspiring, and that fairing actually worked. Cut wind without making the bike feel heavy. BMW sold over 17,000 in 3 years. For a premium-priced German bike in the mid-70s, that was phenomenal. It literally saved the motorcycle division and proved BMW could compete in performance. Sport touring didn't exist as a category before the R90S. BMW invented it with this bike. They showed you didn't have to choose between comfort and performance. The R90S earned every bit of respect it got. It just deserves more. Number 1. Kawasaki H2 750. Number 1. The bike that didn't just earn its nickname, it carved that nickname into the consciousness of everyone who rode one. The Widowmaker, 1972. Kawasaki releases the H2 750, a two-stroke triple that produced 74 horsepower and zero mercy for riders who didn't respect it. 748 cubic centimeters across 3 cylinders. Two-stroke means every cylinder fires once per revolution instead of once every other revolution. The result is power that hits like a freight train. 0 to 60 in 3.9 seconds. In 1972, that was faster than any production vehicle on Earth. 2 wheels or 4. Quarter mile in 12 flat. Top speed around 120. Here's what riding an H2 was like. The first few thousand RPM felt almost tame. Then you'd cross this threshold, usually around 5,000 RPM, and the power would hit all at once. Not gradually. All at once. The front wheel came up whether you wanted it to or not. The back tire scrambled for traction, and if you had any steering input when that power hit, well, that's where the Widowmaker name came from. The H2 wasn't poorly engineered. The problem was, it made so much power from such a compact, lightweight package that the chassis couldn't quite handle it. Add drum brakes that were adequate at best, and you had a motorcycle that demanded complete attention every second. Street racers loved them. If you could tame an H2, you could embarrass anything else through the first 3 gears. But if was doing a lot of work in that sentence. The riding community was split. Some thought it was the most exciting thing on 2 wheels. Pure, unfiltered performance with no safety systems to dull the experience. Others thought Kawasaki was going to get someone killed. Both groups were right. By 1975, it was over. Stricter emissions made two-stroke triples impractical. The insurance industry was asking questions. Kawasaki knew they'd pushed the envelope as far as it could go. The H2 was the last of the unrestricted superbike triples. After this, manufacturers started adding electronics, improving brakes, rethinking how much power was too much. The 70s were this Wild West period where companies built bikes that maybe shouldn't have existed, and the H2 was the pinnacle. Today, clean H2s command serious money from collectors who remember what these bikes represented, the absolute limit of what manufacturers would dare to build before common sense and regulations caught up. 74 horsepower doesn't sound like much now. Modern sport bikes make triple that. But those modern bikes have better everything. The H2 was raw power with just enough bike around it to technically qualify as street legal. 3.9 seconds to 60. 12-second quarter miles. A nickname from respect mixed with genuine fear. The Kawasaki H2 750 pushed boundaries nobody else dared to cross. And it did it with two-stroke Fury riders still talk about 50 years later. Alright, so these were the 10 bikes that don't get the attention they deserve. They're not on posters in every garage, they don't show up in movies, but if you really know motorcycles, you remember what they did and how they changed the game. Some are still affordable, others cost serious money, but everyone is a piece of history you can actually ride, maintain, and enjoy. They're not museum pieces, they're living machines that still work, still run, and still remind us of an era when manufacturers took risks and riders embraced them. If you enjoyed this video, hit that like button, subscribe for more deep dives into forgotten classics, drop a comment, which of these 10 would you buy if money wasn't an issue? Until next time, thanks for watching.